Good afternoon, everyone. I know this session is standing between lunch, and I've been asked to keep it brief. We'll try our best. Since morning, we have been hearing about Viksit Bharat. Let's, see what Viksit Bharat actually, how do we relate to that? What does Viksit Bharat means to all of us? Right? 5 trillion economy, which we wanted to cover it up we wanted to achieve by 2025, but, hopefully we should be there by 2028. Atmanirbhar Bharat, which means less of imports, more of exports of manufactured goods, technology services, increased share of exports, technology, and not just governance. We are talking about technology-driven governance, expanding the digital infrastructure to 5G, and not just 5G, but 5G and beyond, and leverage emerging technologies like AI, ML, and IoT, leading on sustainability, clean energy initiatives, smart city missions, because we need people to reach faster to their destinations, healthcare for all, housing for all, modern agriculture, and definitely ease of doing business, which is all about simplifying the regulations and policies to attract foreign investments. There has been a lot which has happened as far as ease of doing business is concerned over the last 10 years. India's ranking in the ease of doing business in the last 10 years, in 2015 it was 142, and as last checked in 2029, that was the time when World Bank used to do this ranking. We improved our position to 63. After that, World Bank for some reason has stopped doing that ranking. So a lot of steps have been taken to improve the ease of doing business in India. And some of the major ones were, the Digital India Mission, which is all about improving the digital infrastructure of India, increase internet connectivity, enhance the digital literacy, introduce initiatives like the Unified Portal for Clearance, the National Single Window System, digital payments infrastructure, the implementation of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, labor law reforms, Gati Shakti portal, which the minister talked about today morning, dedicated freight corridors, smart city missions, increased FDIs in not just in telecom, but even other sectors like defense and insurance, PLI scheme, which the minister talked about today morning, and the Skill India mission. So, while a lot has been done, we in this panel briefly will try and see what more needs to be done so that we work collectively towards Viksit Bharat. Since this is a telecom-focused event, I'm trying to bring back the attention towards telecom and the telecom-specific reforms that we have seen. Let me start with you, Mr. Manoj. We have seen several, telecom-specific reforms in the last, couple of years. Simplified regulatory framework, the rationalization of, license fees and, SUC charges, transparent spectrum, auctions, simplified ROW, and, which has resulted in improved, tele-density. So, TRAI, plays a pivotal role in shaping India's telecom landscape. And what, as per you, are the key regulatory reforms implemented recently to enhance ease of doing business in the telecom sector, and how do you think they have impacted the stakeholders, which includes not just the MNOs, but also the ecosystem players and the investors?
Thank you, Debashish, and good afternoon, everyone. See, I am going to make it a little humorous as well. I know whether regulator and humor can go in hand, you will be the better judge. See, I'm going to take you away from telecom a little bit. We all talk about ease of doing business. When I am going to give you just a couple of tales of caution, and then end up with humor later. Okay, I beg your indulgence. So, in aviation, there is this American aviation regulator called FAA, Federal Aviation Authority. So they are supposed to inspect Boeing factories and supposed to certify. Obviously, they didn't do it. They left it to the manufacturer, Boeing. They went by the certificate which Boeing's engineers gave as a part of ease of doing business. They signed ease of doing business, ease of doing business. Let us trust the operator. And Boeing is certified. Three things happened. All of you know that. I don't want to, just maybe rehash a bit. 2 Boeing crashes of 737 MAX, 2 deadly crashes. And later on, they also found that, 6 bolts of an aircraft, 737 aircraft, was not fitted, not even fitted in the Seattle factory, but it was certified. And again, the door flew off. The door of the aircraft flew off while it was flying from Alaska. Ease of doing business. Right? Now, let me bring you back to telecom. I recently went for a training in a place called Bharat in UK. So there the Ofcom, all of you know Ofcom. Ofcom is a British regulator. So the fellow came and told us a story. They said again, ease of doing business. So they liberalized sharing of spectrum. So what happened? In 2008, Qualcomm bought spectrum at 8 million pounds. In 2008, Qualcomm bought spectrum at 8 million pounds, did not do anything, no business, just sat over it. In 2015, just 7 years after they bought the spectrum, they sold it at 200 million pounds. That is something which they bought at 8 million pounds, they sold at 200 million pounds. 56% CAGR per year. Our telcos hardly get about bank interest. I am quoting Dr. Kocharji. Telcos hardly get bank interest every year. There, Qualcomm got 56% per year without doing anything. And a return which even Rakesh Jhunjhunwala or Warren Buffett, the greatest legendary investors, have never never been able to generate. Ease of doing business. So, and you know what? There is no problem at all. But then Ofcom was blamed. Entire country blamed Ofcom. Arey, what are you doing? What is all this? So, having said that, I'll come back to TRA as well. And as I said, I'll end up with a little bit of humor as well later. We have done a lot. Actually, we have in TRA as a regulator. My chairman believes in light touch regulation. So we believe we've been doing everything we do, we follow that light touch regulation. Our job is to make compliance burden less. So we have issued a regulation called Ease of Doing Business, where we have said single portal window for everything. Second, we have also had a national broadcasting policy. Again, we have also, like Ofcom did, we have issued a spectrum sharing regulations. We have allowed active and passive sharing of infrastructure. And now, latest, to reduce the compliance burden of the operators, we are asking for, and TRAI, we are asking for 60 reports. CAOA knows that. 60 reports, 60. All the divisions put together are asking for 60 reports from the entire industry. Now, industry has been representing time and again. Nobody bothers. So now I'll tell you why nobody bothers as well. So people who have worked in the government will definitely know. And we, in TRAI, we nominated somebody from outside, Deloitte, to study the system. So Deloitte studied, we gave them an RFP and work order and all that. Deloitte studied everything and they came back to us just last week. They said out of 60 reports, 40% reports are either redundant, I am quoting their words, redundant, obsolete or irrelevant. Now, that's not the problem. The problem is not that. The problem is something else. I am going to quote, I don't know how many of you have heard of a gentleman called Arun Maira, who was the member of Planning Commission. No, he was the chairman of Boston Consulting Group in the United States. Manmohan Singh was the prime minister. He called him and said, please, Bhaiya, idhar aa jao, please come to India and change India. So I read it from his book. So I laughed like anything because I was also working for the government. So in the first paragraph of the book, he writes that before coming to government, I thought that in government, left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. But after working in government as a member of Planning Commission, I have realized that left hand does not know what the left hand is doing. Why? Now reports. Now coming back to reports, which we want to, both chairman and I, we want to reduce the number of reports. I am reminded of my own story and my own experience. When I worked in Mumbai, I had a major office in Nagpur. My colleague Kamal Kapoor knows this. There were around 1,000 people there and so many reports being generated. So many of them used to come to me and I wondered one day, kya hai itna report kyun hai? I asked my director, he had no clue. So then I took a flight and went to Nagpur, called all my officers, 21 gazetted officers. 21 officers are sitting there. तो मैंने पूछा, अरे भाई, why are these reports? ये क्या है? Should we continue? चुप. Nobody is saying anything. Continue करना है नहीं करना है? करना है करना है. पर क्यों करना है? Everybody looked at each other. I kept on pressurizing. क्यों करना है यार unnecessarily? Such a waste of time. Bureaucratic waste. क्यों करना? I put so much pressure. Then one of the officers said, Sir, करना ही पड़ेगा. क्योंकि क्यों? परंपरा है. This parampara is the biggest problem. So Deloitte has now said something which all of us know. 60 reports we will try to reduce that. Debashish will definitely try to reduce that, which will be a part of ease of doing business. That will definitely reduce the complaints burden, but give us some time, fighting against. The TRA also has. My colleague Srivastava sir is sitting here. He knows what I am talking about.
So are you happy with the changing parampara?
No, changing parampara, ask anyone in government. It is such a big task. Tiwari sir is there. Shall I quote one more instance? It is a classic case. We had an officer called Mr. Sudhagar, who was a general manager in RBI, Reserve Bank of India. He came and worked for Department of Posts as a chief investment officer. Worked for 2 years. He was educated abroad in the US. He came and worked for 2 years and left from Mumbai. So the day on which Sudhagar was going, I went to meet him to bid goodbye. So he said, that's just classic about government, absolutely classic statement about government. He said, Manoj, before I came to the government, I thought, because he was an officer in RBI, which is very autonomous, like a regulatory body. Now, they are a regulatory body. So he said, before I even came to the government, I thought all government officers are corrupt, inefficient, and incompetent. Nothing gets done. But after having worked for 2 years, because he was coordinated with one of my colleagues called Vinod, he is now chairman of Mumbai Goa Port Trust, outstanding officer. So he was coordinating with, after meeting you, Mr. Manoj, after meeting Vinod, everyone, I have realized that officers are extremely competent, hardworking, and well-meaning. But the system defeats everyone. Got it? That is what it is. So we'll try our best to change the parampara.
You changing the parampara, let me move on to Jaijit. Jaijit, India's digital economy has definitely seen a remarkable growth over the last several years, especially with initiatives like Digital India and advancements in the telecom infrastructure. So in your view, how has the digital economy contributed to improving the ease of doing business in India?
I think each feds into the other. So the telecom backbone is the backbone for digital economy. And the fact that there is digital economy feeds back into the ease of doing business for even the telecom. Clearly, the digital infrastructure has transformed everything that we are doing. The way we are communicating, if it's getting broadcasted, this whole conversation is getting broadcasted. I see so many people working on their phones, executing mission critical work, I'm sure, while they are over here. So from the smallest thing of, let me take an example of fisheries, where there's a large fisheries industry coming up because they can monitor the pH in the tank, they can monitor the temperature in the tank and all of the parameters in the fish tank and send it to a centralized cloud, which is managing over 10,000 such small ponds all over. Now that's the power of technology. If you leave it to the villager, then you have to train every single villager to be an expert in fisheries, which is quite a challenge. Here, no one has to be an expert. They set up the tank, they connect the transducers and the IoT and so on and so forth, which doesn't cost much, and they link it back to a centralized server. Now, what are the challenges over here? That we still don't have connectivity to every village. That's still a challenge. You can't hang a mobile phone because that makes it very expensive. You can't hang a mobile phone to the tanks. The tanks cost roughly 10,000 rupees. The fish feed and so on and so forth cost about 5,000-6,000 rupees more. Overall, on an annualized basis, for 2 sets of fish coming out, it's about 60,000 rupees of investment. Imagine hanging around another 10,000 rupees of phone on it, it becomes a challenge. And therefore, initiatives such as a smart village is coming in, which is going to help further enhance the digital economy that we have. And therefore, the digital economy is not just for the airlines that we're talking about or fancy stuff that we're talking about, but it's fundamentally changing how we do business, how we interact with each other, how our new industries are coming up, because digitally enabled fisheries did not exist earlier. The entire transformation that will happen with this kind of efficiencies. And that's just one small example. There are zillion such examples. The whole Drone Didi initiative, it's transforming both how agriculture is done as well as the status of women in the rural areas. So the transformation is very, very deep, very, very fundamental. Let me take another example to underline what I'm talking about. About 5 to 6 years ago, villages in Gujarat were actually using Google Translate and using Airbnb to ensure that they got foreign visitors coming and staying at their houses. And they would use the English language and translate that to Gujarati, and then when they would need to respond, they will go back to Google Translate, do the responding. And that transformed that village. And they had a challenge because, their weaving was being copied by the Chinese, so the traditional Indian weave had been copied, and the Chinese were selling it at 75% of the cost, and therefore their traditional business was off. And they came out with this as a mechanism to substitute their income levels. So as I come back to the point that you're mentioning, that how is digital economy really playing out, it's being fundamental. And even that word fundamental is an understatement, because the way we talk, the way we interact, the way we play, the way we entertain ourselves, the way there is sports out there, the new kinds of sports that are coming out, everything has transformed very, very deeply. And it's feeding into each other. So transformation of one sector feeds into another sector, feeds into how the government is working, the government changes and adopts new technologies, which then feeds back into the society.
Well said. So what I understood that you are talking about technology as an enabler with some of the examples which you took. And in order to use that technology, you also need to be aware you need to have certain skills to, to use those technologies which can help you to do your business and also attract, outsiders to come and do business in your country. So while we talk about skills, let me move to you, Kamal. Kamal, you represent NCA, the National Communication Academy for Finance. So India is, emerging as a key player in the global telecom ecosystem, right? So from a skill development perspective, how do you see your institute that you represent contributing to India's ease of doing business by building a talent pool that can meet global standards and attract further investments?
Thank you, Debashish. Good afternoon, all. I would like to begin with, or rather take off from the point where the previous panelist, in the previous panel, Colonel Prashant, he referred to Telecom Sector Skill Council report of 23. I want to share 2 data points out here. Besides what he informed about the domains in which skill is required, skilled manpower is required, the current gap is 2.4 million as per the estimates made by that report. And it is expected to balloon to 9 million by 2030. So this is the magnitude of the problem which we are looking at. The problem is further compounded by the fact that 40% of the graduates in the STEM fields are employable. And this is not my words, this is the report of TSSC. However, the report is confident that with proper reskilling and tapping into tier 2 and tier 3 cities and university pool, this gap can be made up. Now, I belong to National Communications Academy, or rather I serve there, and it is the Central Training Institute for Department of Telecom, and essentially our mandate is to train our own service officers. However, with evolving times, we are also venturing into other space, collaborating with industry, collaborating with academia to train manpower from the industry as well. For our own people, we hold trainings at different levels, at different stages, induction level, mid-service level, and so on and so forth, in key domain areas like network management, network security, cyber security, blockchain, distributed ledger technology, so on and so forth. We have recently organized programs on 5G certification, also looking at faculty development program for 5G, so that there is a sort of a pool of master trainers in different engineering colleges and institutions who can provide education in 5G or exposure to 5G. We also organized a workshop on IoT in collaboration with top IoT solution providers, so as to talk about IoT device integration with telecom infrastructure. In the pipeline are some joint certification programs, which are sort of a hybrid kind of internship kind of thing. The discussions are still going on, but this is one thing which can effectively contribute to development of skilled manpower in the industry side. NCF is also not only focused only on the technological domain. We are also looking at other domains. For example, in the previous panel, Mr. Tewatia talked about the long-winded ITU process for making standards. So we recently organized a workshop on bridging the standardization gap in collaboration with ITU field office, so that our officers and our people can be trained in representing India so that Indian interests are taken care of. Similarly, in the field of WTO negotiations, we need a skilled manpower for that also. People should be trained in the issues of that also. So we held a workshop on ITA 1 and ITA 2, so that again, people are adept in representing India's viewpoint and India's interests are taken care of at such international fora. In the NCF, we have set up a Center for Policy Studies and Research as sort of a think tank to provide cutting-edge research on communication finance mainly, but also covering topics like spectrum economics, spectrum valuation, and so on and so forth. As a Government of India institution, we have adopted IGOT under the Mission Karmayogi in a big way. We have published more than 120 courses on different items on IGOT, which can be used by all officers across the Government of India, not only just Department of Telecom. We are collaborating with the first generation IITs and IIMs in designing, developing and implementing our various training initiatives. So in that way, NCF is very tuned into the problem and is contributing in this manner. And with the upcoming joint certification programs, we are confident that we will be able to actively contribute much more to this thing. Thank you.
So just a quick follow-up on that. Apart from all these training, solutions that you develop in-house, and I heard you talk about academia, partnering with academia. Do you also at times partner with or collaborate with any third-party institutes to deliver these trainings?
Definitely. As I just mentioned, that we have developed and designed and implemented programs in collaboration with IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi, Triple IIT, IIM Kolkata, IIM Indore, and many other institutions. We are also collaborating with industry. Before venturing on any training program or workshop, we first hold stakeholder consultation with the industry also, that what exactly do they want, so that the training program can be organized in the same manner. For example, this WTO workshop, more than the government side, it was the industry side which saw participation. So industry was very keen to understand the nuances involved in WTO negotiations and all that. So we organized that kind of workshop also. And again, we are welcome to take further this partnership. We would like to interact with industry and like to know what are their specific requirements so that our facilities and our expertise can be used in that regard.
Sure. Manoj, coming back to you, TRAI has a reputation for extensive stakeholder consultations.
Yeah.
We at GSMA, we also participate in your consultation papers and responding to that. So how does this approach contribute to improving ease of doing business? Can you share some examples where collaborative policymaking has led to significant industry benefits?
See, a couple of instances that I can point out before I go into the stakeholder consultation. One is that we recently released an order of TCCPR. So that's on these unsolicited calls which the industry is aware of. The customers were absolutely fed up with that. So there was a lot of stakeholder consultation on that. So basically one point which I wanted to highlight here is that there was absolute unanimity among all the stakeholders, as you rightly pointed out, Debashish, GSMA, COI, consumer advocacy groups. There was absolutely no hassle at all. My colleague Mahendra Srivastava is here. just recently retired. His division was the one who issued TCCPR. We also contributed a bit, my F&EA division. But coming back to, as you said, the stakeholder consultations, coming back to the other issue which we issued, F&EA, my division issued, TCPR, that's about all this, voice-only calls, voice and SMS only calls. So that was a major drama. So stakeholder consultations, it is like reading a thriller. See, you sit there in the office, COA will come, present one view, Vodafone will come, present one view, somebody from Broadband India Foundation, Tarun is here, he will come and argue why he should not be there. Broadband India Forum, unfortunately, I think they are not there. Debashish will come and vociferously argue why it should be there. Consumer Advocacy Group, some people will come and argue that it should be there. All operators are up in arms against this particular voice and SMS only tariff. As you said about the stakeholder consultation.
Tarun, please don't argue. Please don't argue.
You don't argue. But it was very interesting, to sit there and listen to various points of view. Eventually, I think, we discussed with my chairman as well. He has, as I said, he has also repeated in his present when he spoke. Our aim has always been to reduce the compliance burden of the industry. We are with you. I am just quoting Albert Camus, the Nobel Prize winner of literature. He said, "Do not stand ahead of me. I will not follow. Do not stand behind me. I will not lead. Stand with me. Let's walk together." So this is the policy that we have been following. So we can rest assured that TRI will be there. As a regulatory authority, we will be there. But at the same time, as I said, in the safeguards and the caution, we have to listen to both sides of the story. And when you listen to both sides of the story, my chairman, again quoting my chairman, he said, "Manoj, there is no truth or false. It's only shades of gray." Thank you.
So, Jaijit, even at GSMA, we have, a few pillars of the digital nations narrative, right? Governance, infrastructure, digital infrastructure, people, security, all, forms a part of it. Trust is something which is coming out as a, very important topic these days whenever we talk about, digital, right? Trust or the lack of it. So digital trust, is a critical element of thriving digital economy. How do you think India, how can India strengthen the digital trust through data privacy, cybersecurity, and transparent governance to improve ease of doing business for global as well as for domestic stakeholders?
When you use the word trust along with economy, then one of the dimensions of trust is business trust, right? The other dimension is social trust. Whether you and me will use the digital infrastructure which is out there. And we have seen what has happened. There has been rampant fraud that has happened across multiple platforms, and steps are being taken. And it's a continuous cat and mouse game. You solve one of the trust issues, another one comes out. But I think your question is more from a regulatory perspective as to what is it that the government needs to do, therefore leading to the trust in industries and businesses, right? Now, clearly, many of the areas are, from a regulatory perspective, as in any other place in the world, is work in progress. It'll continue to be work in progress. One of the examples, if I take from Manoj, is about the Boeing 2 planes crashing. Now they crashed because of AI. That was the first death caused by AI. About 570 people died. Now, if the AI does not get access to data in an appropriate manner, then we'll have substandard AIs coming up, or suboptimal, I wouldn't say substandard, but suboptimal AI coming up. The flip side to it is that what kind of data are we talking about, right? Now, there will be a lack of trust if the businesses don't know what is the kind of data they can access to and what is the kind of data they cannot access to. Let's take it further. If the system is looking at data from children, now that's a violation of the current draft DPDP rules. There are ways and means that are being prescribed in the rules, but is it implementable is the issue. Has it been implemented anywhere else in the world is the other issue. If you look at a telecom company as an example, whether on the other side of it, of the infrastructure, there is a device, and is that device being held by a child? How would a telecom company know? it might be registered in their parents' name. But insofar as the regulations are concerned, the liability is still that of the telecom company. It is excruciatingly complex for the government or the industry sitting together to figure out a way forward. But we do know that the peg point is that you can't compromise on children's data. So finding out a solution becomes a challenge. Until the time we can't do it, it's a matter of trust. Because how will the enforcement agencies who come in later will treat you? And that becomes a challenge. That is a phenomenon that's replicated across multiple entities. Let's say, you talked about the next generation of technologies. Clearly, satellite telephony is one of the issues. There isn't any clarity. But by the time the clarity comes in, will our domestic players be ready for it? Because if there isn't clarity now, then they are not ready for the change that will be coming in from alignment to the regulatory issues. And therefore, there is a trust gap that exists. I can take examples after examples where there is a gap. In fact, the other point that Manoj was talking about is the return on investments that the telecom companies are getting. The return on capital is actually much less than the fixed deposit return. Now, on paper, they look profitable, but on reality, it isn't. But there are challenges that are being faced in terms of OTTs, in terms of other kinds of compromise that are happening. The SMS revenues is dropped by 98%. Now, in that context, if the telecom companies are not free to have the same level of freedom that other sub-industries are having, such as OTTs, such as apps and so on and so forth, then they are constrained in improving their profitability. There is, again, a space of trust not being there.
Sure. I'm conscious of time because I don't want this session to stand in between lunch. But, just a quick segue and, be brief with your response, Jaijit. Because you have been talking about security, trust, personal data as well, which is in our hands. There is a recent draft which has come for the DPDP, the Digital Data Protection, Personal Data Protection Act. It is still out there, and there are talks that the extension will be there for another 15 days for the public to respond on that. Any views you want to share on that DPDP, which is there?
I think I've covered the few points very clearly. I've covered the points on access to children's data, how it will happen through the virtual token process that has been mentioned. It's not very clear, right? The issue of data being accessed for AI, it's not clear. Also, if you look at AI, even a human, when they learn, we take data from various sources. Do we go around taking consent on it? If this session goes public on the net, we'll look at it, we'll read it, and we have gained knowledge. AI works similarly. But the current regulation seems to be having an impeding effect on that. We are still not a AI nation in that sense. We don't have a large number of startups, a large number of companies which have got access to fundamental AI. So if you're bringing in regulations at this stage which impedes, I think we have to sit back and think through it. Overall, the DPDP rules are, I think, quite appropriate. It's needed. But the other fear also is that just like what happened with GDPR when it comes to end consumer, and that was your question, the website opens up, it says, do you want to be tracked or not tracked? You click one or the other and you don't really care and you move forward. So the compromise happens at our end because of the mechanism that has been put into place. It's a very cumbersome mechanism that has been put into place. So my fear is that might get replicated. At the end of the day, we are the weakest chain.
Although I had a couple of questions more for my panelists, but I see that time is up and I promised to finish it on time. I would like to thank each one of you, the esteemed panelists, for sharing their insights. And thank you to COAI for giving us this opportunity. Thank you.